The Harper family lived on Maplewood Drive in a house that looked perfect from the outside. Manicured lawn, freshly painted shutters, a mailbox that never leaned. To the neighbors, Daniel Harper was the ideal husband, kind, successful, and respected as a school counselor. Laura Harper, his wife, appeared equally flawless, balancing the household and social calendar with ease. And then there was Emily, their 17-year-old daughter, ambitious and bright, seemingly untouched by the complications of adult life. Life for the Harpers had always been predictable, safe, and, most importantly, quiet, until the night the phone buzzed. Daniel was sitting in the living room, finishing a cup of tea while Laura washed dishes in the kitchen. The TV played quietly, a muted background to the ordinary hum of a Tuesday evening. Daniel's phone, resting face up on the coffee table, lit up with a notification. He reached for it absent-mindedly, expecting a text from a colleague or perhaps a reminder about a parent-teacher conference. Instead, the words on the screen froze him. "I know what you did. Pay, or everyone finds out." At first, he laughed nervously, shaking his head as though the absurdity of the message could erase it. A prank, surely, some cruel attempt at humor. But his gut tightened into knots. Something about the wording made him instinctively reach for the trash bin, imagining someone laughing from behind a screen. He unlocked the phone, squinting at Basinder's number. It was unrecognizable, traced to an unregistered device. And then the next notification appeared. A photograph. Daniel's stomach dropped. The image was clear, undeniable. Him at a motel years ago, a woman he hadn't thought about in over a decade. Her identity was unmistakable, and her presence at that place was a secret he had buried long before Emily was born. $50,000 in 3 days, no police, or everything comes out. Daniel set the phone down, his hands trembling. Laura walked in from the kitchen, towel in hand. "You okay?" she asked, concern knitting her brow. "Yeah, fine," he muttered, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just work stuff." But the lie was thin, and Laura knew it. Something was off, though she couldn't place it. She turned back toward the sink, frowning slightly. Meanwhile, Emily was curled on the sofa with her laptop, earbuds in, oblivious to the tension building just a few feet away. But her instincts were sharp. She noticed Daniel's restless glances, the way he kept checking the phone as if expecting it to explode. The calm she thought she knew in their home felt suddenly fragile. Daniel tried to push the messages out of his mind. He considered calling the police, but the threats were clear: involve law enforcement, and the pictures, the affair, the secrets, all would spill into the public eye, not just ruining him, but Laura, Emily, their reputations, their lives. Panic began to swirl in his chest. He could almost hear the ticking of a countdown timer, though none had been given, only a looming sense of inevitable collapse. He remembered the woman in the photo, 10 years ago. It had been a mistake, a moment of weakness. It hadn't meant anything. It hadn't lasted beyond a single night. He had buried it deep, built a life that ignored that dark moment, a life he thought was untouchable. And now someone had reached back into the past to pull it into the present like a dagger through his chest. Another message arrived. 3 days, no excuses. Daniel could barely breathe. His thoughts raced uncontrollably, imagining the worst. He pictured the scandal, the whispers among colleagues, the judgmental glances from neighbors, the unbearable humiliation if Laura ever found out. And worse, what if Emily discovered it before he could contain it? She was smart, fiercely independent, and capable of uncovering secrets he had worked so hard to hide. He excused himself to the study, shutting the door behind him. The room was dimly lit, lined with bookshelves and framed diplomas. He sank into his chair, staring at the phone, frozen. Every option felt dangerous. Pay? That would drain their savings and not guarantee safety. Refuse? The threat of exposure hung over them like a guillotine. Involve the police? That was out of the question. One wrong step could ensure the pictures and the story went public anyway. His mind kept returning to one thought. How did they even find me now? 10 years had passed. The incident was buried, hidden in plain sight, and yet here it was, like a ghost he couldn't escape. Minutes stretched into an hour. Daniel's breathing grew shallow. He imagined the executioner, faceless, lurking somewhere, typing messages that could shatter his family. Every imagined scenario ended with devastation. Laura crying, Emily angry, the life they had built crumbling like sand through his fingers. Laura knocked lightly. "Daniel, everything okay in here?" she asked, voice tight. "I'm fine, really," he said. But he wasn't fine. His stomach twisted into knots as he tried to craft a story, a cover for whatever he needed to do next. The silence in the house was unbearable. Even the muted hum of the television in the living room seemed distant, like a sound from another world. Daniel's mind wandered to the woman in the photograph again. What if someone had seen me? What if someone had recognized me? He had been careful, meticulous in hiding the past, and now all of it threatened to explode. In the kitchen, Laura sighed and shook her head. She didn't know the truth, but something had shifted. The perfect harmony of their home had an undercurrent now, tension, fear, secrets that could no longer be contained. Emily, across the room, removed her earbuds, sensing the weight in the air, the quiet dread that made her want to ask questions she wasn't sure she wanted answered. Daniel returned to the living room and sank on the sofa, phone in hand. Each buzz, each message made his heart jump. He checked the time, 11:17 p.m. 3 days. That countdown felt like an eternity compressed into minutes. He couldn't tell Laura, he couldn't tell Emily, and yet he knew their lives had changed forever. One simple ping, one single text message had broken the fragile illusion of safety they had taken for granted. Outside, the wind rattled the window panes. Inside, the Harper family sat unaware that their world had tilted on its axis. One secret, once buried, had resurfaced. One text, seemingly innocent at first, carried with it the power to ruin everything. Daniel's eyes flicked to the phone again. Another notification appeared. He froze, stomach tight. The screen displayed nothing but the sender's number, untraceable, unknown, and a blinking cursor waiting for him to respond. He knew he had no choice. The first move had to be made, but every option felt wrong, every decision a trap. The night stretched on, shadows of doubt creeping over the walls of the Harper household. Outside, the street remained silent, but inside, a storm had begun, a storm that would not end in 3 days, or 3 weeks, or 3 years. One text message had set it in motion, and the Harpers, blissfully unaware until now, were about to find out just how fragile perfection could be. The next morning, Daniel woke before the sun, the blackmail messages still burning in his mind. The photograph from the previous night haunted him, replaying in vivid detail. He had hoped that by sleeping he could push it away, but the fear had only deepened. Every shadow in the house now felt like a threat, every creak of the floorboards a warning that the past had come back to claim him. He slipped into the study again, trying to think logically. He had never imagined a mistake from a decade ago could return like a predator waiting in the dark. The sum demanded, $50,000, was a fortune, but Daniel had savings. He could scrape it together, pay the blackmailer, and maybe, just maybe, keep the secret buried. But when he opened the messages, his heart sank. Another image had arrived overnight. This one was worse. It showed him arguing with the same woman in a dimly lit parking lot, the tension between them obvious even from the photograph. A timestamp revealed it was taken on the day she disappeared. The blackmailer's message read, "I see everything, Daniel. No more hiding." Daniel's hand shook. His mind raced through a decade of carefully constructed lies and rationalizations. He hadn't killed her. He hadn't even intended to leave her in danger. But the truth was messy. He had argued with her, stormed off, and left her alone in a dangerous neighborhood. That moment, once buried in the past, now threatened to unravel his life completely. In the kitchen, Laura noticed his pallor, the way his hands trembled as he poured himself coffee. "Daniel, are you all right?" she asked cautiously, her voice tinged with suspicion. I'm fine, Laura, just stressed about work," he lied again, forcing a weak smile. But she wasn't convinced. Laura had always been perceptive. She sensed something darker than work stress, a shadow hanging over him that wasn't there before. Emily, meanwhile, was more aware than her parents realized. At 17, she had learned to notice the unspoken cues, the tension in Daniel's jaw, the way Laura's eyes narrowed slightly when he lied. She decided to investigate discreetly, checking her father's habits, online behavior, and even his trash for clues. Hours later, Emily's search began to yield results. A news archive revealed a missing woman's case from 10 years ago, the same time frame as Daniel's affair. Her heart raced as she read the details. The woman had vanished without a trace. Police had interviewed Daniel, and his statements had cleared him of suspicion. But the image she had seen last night suggested someone knew more than the public did. Daniel felt trapped. He couldn't involve Laura. She would be devastated. He couldn't turn to Emily. She was just a teenager, innocent and unprepared for the complexity of adult mistakes. And the blackmailer's threats grew bolder with each message. $100,000 now, or police, or public exposure. Your choice. Daniel's world collapsed. The first sum had been terrifying. This demand was ruinous. The blackmailer had escalated without hesitation, showing that they weren't playing fair. Panic clawed at him, and for the first time, Daniel felt the weight of desperation press down like a physical force. Laura confronted him later that afternoon. She had seen a fragment of the latest message, accidentally glimpsed over his shoulder as he fumbled to hide it. "Daniel, what is this?" she asked, her voice trembling between fear and fury. He froze. He couldn't lie without her knowing, yet the truth could destroy everything. "It's nothing. A scam, probably. Some internet jerk trying to trick me." Laura's eyes narrowed. "Daniel, I don't think that's it. You're hiding something. I can feel it." The weight of his secrets pressed down on him. He admitted to the affair, a long-suppressed mistake, a betrayal from a different life. But he left out the most dangerous part, that the woman had disappeared, and evidence suggested he was the last person to see her. Laura's face went pale, shock mixed with anger. You lied to me all these years?" "Yes, but I didn't hurt her. I swear, Laura, I didn't kill her," Daniel pleaded, desperation making his voice shake. Emily, from her spot on the stairs, overheard part of the conversation. Her heart pounded. She had always trusted her father, and now everything felt like it was collapsing around her. Curiosity wrestled with fear. She had to know the truth. Emily began her own investigation in secret, scouring online archives, social media profiles, and news reports. Late that night, she discovered more than she expected. The missing woman's case was cold, but the circumstances were eerily linked to her father's past. Her stomach churned, but she couldn't stop. Pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Daniel's affair, his argument the day the woman disappeared, the blackmail message, it was all connected. Meanwhile, Daniel attempted to gather the demanded money. He withdrew savings, made awkward calls to friends for loans, and even considered liquidating investments. But the blackmailer's demands were growing faster than he could comply. Each new message revealed a deeper knowledge of his life, even including intimate details about Laura and Emily, proof that the sender had been watching them closely. $100,000 by midnight. Fail and the world knows your secrets. The Harrison household, once a haven, became a cage of fear. Every knock at the door, every unknown call set nerves on edge. Even the neighbors' friendly greetings felt like scrutiny. Daniel's every move was calculated, every glance strategic, every lie meticulously crafted. Yet the blackmailer seemed always one step ahead. And then came the message that shattered the fragile balance. A photograph of Emily taken outside school, the timestamp recent, the message beneath it chilling. She's too perfect. Let's see what happens when the truth comes out. Daniel's blood ran cold. The blackmailer was no longer targeting him alone. His daughter was involved. Panic became terror. Fear, already heavy, became a living thing in the Harrison house, breathing down their necks, infecting every corner. Laura, sensing the growing menace, pressed further. "Daniel, who is doing this? We can't live like this. We need to know." He hesitated, torn between protecting Emily and revealing the full truth. But the thought of losing her, or worse, her getting hurt, made the decision for him. He had to confront the blackmailer. And somewhere, hidden in the shadows of the city, the sender waited, patient, watching, knowing the Harrison family was cracking, and that soon no one would be safe from the consequences of a single mistake made long ago. The day ended with the family isolated in their home, the once warm walls now cold and suffocating. Daniel sat alone in the study with phone in hand, dread coiling around his chest like a living thing. Laura paced silently in the living room, grief and anger warring in her heart. Emily stayed in her room, wide awake, her mind racing, knowing that the world she had trusted was far more fragile than she had ever imagined. The Harrison family could no longer pretend that life was normal. One text message had not just threatened to expose the past, it had begun to consume the present. Daniel could feel the weight of the past pressing down on him like a storm cloud ready to break. The messages hadn't stopped, they had multiplied. Every notification on his phone brought fresh terror, evidence that the blackmailer knew more than he had ever feared. But Daniel had reached a point where he could no longer hide. The blackmailer wasn't just after him, they were after his family. Emily had been photographed outside school, and he knew that if he didn't act, the situation could spiral completely out of control. He arranged a meeting, hoping to negotiate, perhaps even reason with the person behind this nightmare. Daniel drove in the dark, headlights cutting through the fog, nerves tightening with every mile. He parked in an abandoned lot near the edge of the city, heart hammering in his chest. The instructions were clear. Come alone, do not call the police, and do not bring anyone else. Daniel waited, glancing at the shadows, every passing car a potential threat. And then he saw him, a man stepping out of the darkness, tall, lean, and radiating an intensity that made Daniel instinctively step back. Marcus Reed, the missing woman's brother. "I've been waiting a long time, Daniel," Marcus said, his voice low, controlled but simmering with anger. "Do you know what it's like to lose someone and never get answers? 10 years, Daniel, 10 years of wondering, and now you expect to hide behind lies?" Daniel swallowed hard. "Marcus, I didn't kill her. I didn't even know what happened to her after that night. I was scared. I panicked. I left her, yes, but I didn't—" "Stop." Marcus's eyes flared. "Save your excuses. You walked away. You lied to the police. You erased yourself from her life. And now, 10 years later, you're still running?" Daniel felt a pang of shame so deep it nearly made him stagger. He had thought he could protect his family by burying the past, but the past had hunted him, and now it had found him in full. Meanwhile, Laura had grown suspicious of Daniel's prolonged absence. She had followed him in her car, keeping her distance, heart pounding with fear. What she saw stopped her in her tracks. Daniel speaking with Marcus Reed, his face contorted with desperation, hands raised in pleading. Emily, unable to sleep that night, had taken matters into her own hands. She had contacted a retired detective she trusted and sent him the photos, the messages, and the timeline she had pieced together. Within hours, the detective began digging into the cold case, reopening files that had long gathered dust. Back at the lot, Marcus advanced, his anger palpable. "You think I'm here for money?" he demanded. "I'm here for the truth, and I will get it, Daniel, one way or another." Daniel's throat grew dry. He tried to explain again, detailing the argument the night the woman disappeared, the panic, his choice to leave, and his fear of exposing the truth. Marcus listened silently, jaw tight, then shook his head. "You weren't honest then, and I don't believe you're honest now, and you won't be until the world knows everything you've been hiding." Suddenly, Laura stepped forward from the shadows, unable to stay hidden any longer. Her eyes were wide with fear and disbelief. "Daniel, what's going on?" Marcus's gaze shifted to Laura, cold and calculating. "She needs to hear it too. She deserves to know what kind of man you really are." Daniel's heart sank. The truth was a double-edged sword. If he told Laura everything, it could destroy their marriage. But if he didn't, Marcus's threat loomed larger than ever. I made a mistake," Daniel said finally, voice trembling. "I had an affair years ago. I didn't hurt her. I didn't kill her. I left her after an argument, and I was terrified." Laura's hands shook. "You left her?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Daniel, she disappeared." "Yes, I know," Daniel cried, tears brimming in his eyes. "I didn't know what happened after that night. I swear I didn't hurt her. I didn't kill her. I lied to protect myself, my family, but I never touched her." Emily, listening from a distance, felt her heart pound. She had always trusted her father, and now the puzzle pieces she had uncovered finally formed a picture, one more terrifying than she had imagined. She couldn't ignore it any longer. She pulled out her phone and sent all the evidence to the retired detective, timestamps, images, message logs. The truth could no longer be contained. Marcus stepped back, studying Daniel's face. "Do you realize what you've done, Daniel? How many lives your lies have affected? Do you understand the damage?" "Yes," Daniel said, his voice breaking, "and I'm ready to make it right." At that moment, distant sirens began to wail. The detective Emily had contacted had started moving, sending officers to triangulate the blackmailer's location. Marcus froze, realizing the law was closing in. Daniel saw his chance. "Marcus, please," he said, "we can figure this out. The truth will come out through the right channels. You don't have to keep this going." Marcus's face hardened, then softened slightly. He had spent 10 years seeking answers and closure, and the chaos surrounding Daniel had been the only way he knew to achieve it. But now, with police closing in and the truth finally emerging, Marcus stepped back. The Harper family stood together, though shaken, as officers arrived at the lot, surrounding Marcus and securing the scene. Daniel felt a strange mix of relief and terror. The truth was coming out, but it wasn't painless. Later, back at home, the family sat in silence. Daniel and Laura tried to process what had happened. The affair had been exposed, the blackmailer apprehended, and the real events of the past were finally beginning to surface. Emily, exhausted but resolute, understood the role she had played in forcing the truth into the light. Even as relief washed over them, one thing was clear: their lives would never be the same. Trust had been shattered, innocence lost, and the past had left indelible marks. Daniel stared at the empty living room, haunted by what he had hidden and what had been revealed. Laura wiped her tears silently, and Emily sat quietly, knowing that even though the blackmailer was gone, the damage of years of lies could not simply be undone. The Harper house was quiet. Too quiet. For the first time in a week, the hum of tension had lifted, but the relief was hollow. Daniel sat in the study, staring at the phone on the desk. It had been hours since the police had taken Marcus Reed into custody, yet the air still felt heavy, as if the weight of the past refused to lift. Laura stood by the window, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the darkening street. She had heard Daniel's confession, witnessed his vulnerability, and yet the wound ran deep. Trust, once broken, does not heal overnight. The affair, the lies, the blackmail, the threats to Emily, it had all left a mark on her heart, a scar she wasn't sure could fade. Emily sat on the stairs, phone in hand, scrolling through the messages she had sent to the retired detective. She felt a strange mix of pride and sorrow. She had uncovered the truth and forced the past into the light, but the consequences were heavier than she had imagined. The family she thought she knew, the life she had trusted, had been upended by a single text message, a tiny digital spark that had ignited a firestorm of secrets and lies. The police had reopened the cold case of the missing woman. Surveillance footage, long forgotten in an evidence locker, had surfaced. It showed the woman walking down a dimly lit alley late at night, followed at a distance by a shadowy figure. That figure was not Daniel. It was a man who had been known in the neighborhood for petty crimes, someone who had never been linked to the woman until now. DNA evidence confirmed it. The real killer had been found, decades-old lies finally catching up with the truth. For Daniel, the revelation was a bitter relief. He was innocent of murder, but the damage to his life, his family, and his reputation was undeniable. He had survived the storm, yet nothing would ever be the same. Laura turned to him, her voice quiet but firm. "You didn't kill her. I get that now. But Daniel, all those years of lies, the hiding, the secrets, how do I know what else you've kept from me?" Daniel reached out, but she stepped back. "I love you," he said, "and I know I failed you. I can't take back the past, but I can try to make the future right." Laura shook her head. "The future, Daniel, I don't know if that's possible anymore. I can't pretend everything is okay. I can't pretend the betrayal didn't happen. I need space." The words hit him like a physical blow. Divorce was no longer a distant thought. It was inevitable. Their marriage, once a fortress, was crumbling under the weight of his mistakes. Daniel nodded, swallowing hard, knowing there was no arguing with reality. Emily, sensing the finality of her parents' conversation, slipped to her room. She felt a quiet sadness, mourning the loss of the family she had taken for granted. Her childhood innocence had been replaced with a cold awareness. Life could change in an instant, and one small mistake or one text could unravel everything. Days passed. Marcus Reed faced charges for blackmail and harassment, but his motive was clear to the authorities. Years of grief and obsession had driven him to desperate measures. He didn't need to hurt Daniel. He needed the truth. But justice, as it often does, came in a form that could not undo the pain he had caused. The police continued their investigation, reviewing the reopened missing person case and interviewing Daniel thoroughly. The real killer, a man who had eluded justice for a decade, was finally in custody. The charges against Daniel were cleared, and his name was officially exonerated. Yet even with his innocence confirmed, the consequences of his past choices lingered. Daniel returned to the house he had called home, walking through rooms that felt unfamiliar. The walls were the same, the furniture unchanged, yet everything felt different. The perfect family image had been shattered. The truth had been revealed, the lies exposed, and the consequences, emotional, social, and personal, could not be undone. Laura packed her things slowly, methodical but detached. She had made her decision. Divorce papers were prepared. Daniel watched silently, heart aching, realizing that even though he had survived the legal storm, he had failed to protect the one thing he had valued most, his family's trust. Emily's departure for college came soon after. She hugged her father tightly, a mixture of love and sorrow in her embrace. "I'll be back for holidays," she said softly, trying to mask the grief in her voice. But as she left, Daniel felt the emptiness settle over the house, a reminder of how fragile life and trust could be. One evening, alone in the study, Daniel stared at the phone. The screen remained dark, quiet, but he knew the events of the past week would echo forever. A single text had triggered a series of consequences that no money, no apologies, no explanations could fully repair. The past had finally caught up with him. The blackmailer was gone, the real killer apprehended, yet the scars left behind were permanent. Daniel's career had ended, his marriage had crumbled, his daughter had left to begin her life in a world far from the chaos of their home. And yet there was one thing he could not escape, the lesson written in painful clarity across every ruined moment. One text, one mistake, one secret, no matter how small, could destroy a life. One moment of weakness could ripple outward, tearing apart everything you held dear. Daniel sank into the chair, head and hands, thinking of Emily, of Laura, of the home that once felt safe and warm. He thought of Marcus Reed, whose grief had turned him into a blackmailer, and of the woman who had disappeared, a life lost to circumstance and fear. The Harper family had survived the storm, but at what cost? Trust, innocence, love, all fractured. Some wounds could heal with time, but some scars remain forever. The truth had come out, justice had been served, yet the life they once knew would never return. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, a cold reminder that the world could shift in an instant. Inside, Daniel Harper sat alone, staring at the darkened phone, knowing that no matter how much he had learned, no matter how much justice had been served, one simple text message had changed everything, and the Harper family would never fully recover.